Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Departed deck list and review video. And so without further ado, let's just get into the deck list. And if you have any questions on any cards that are chosen, I'll go into further details later on in the video after I show the deck list. This deck list here got first out of a 31-man tournament in Japan. It's not the highest count for a tournament, but I think it's enough to at least give a good starting point for building the deck. I certainly do have a few questions and quandaries and qualms about it, but I will get to that in a little bit. But starting off, we have Soul Conversion at 2, Ilgano Horror Stray at 3, Dead to Rights at 3, Demonium Punk Devil at 1, Arcus Spirited Manager at 1, Do Blame Duke and Dame at 3, Skeleton Dreamer at 3, Forbidden Art at 3, Great Big Corpse at 3, Nicola Forbidden Strength at 3, The Wretch at 3, Zelganea of the World at 2, Underworld Watchman Kawi at 2, Ice Shilindry Gilded Autocrat at 3, Demon Lord Ekdar at 2, and Tartarus the Tormentor at 3. The Evolved deck is also a pretty even spread of Nicola Forbidden Strength at 2, Do Blame Duke and Dame at 2, The Wretch at 2, Tartarus the Tormentor at 2, and Ice Shilindry Gilded Autocrat at 2. So what are my complaints about this deck? Well, first, on a personal note, I just like to build Departed as pure Departed minus Tartarus the Tormentor. So I personally will probably just kind of build it more as just pure Departed, 47 Departed and then 3 non-Departed with Tartarus the Tormentor. But I wouldn't say that's a legitimate concern. That's just more of a personal preference of mine and just how I like to build the deck. I guess one thing that I find a little strange is this, the one of Demonium Punk Devil. I get why it's in there because you can resurrect it with Demon Lord Ekdar and it gives a little bit of good, life and it gives Bane easily, but it just seems very random that it's at 1. So how consistent is it at getting the Punk Devil? But mainly the biggest question / concern I have is why they'd be running Zelganea of the World, but not O Great World. And I understand why they're running the World, because it works well with the Magic Train token, but I'm surprised that they couldn't fit one O Great World somewhere. It seems like you could even just run Do Blame Duke and Dame as a 2 of in the main deck and 1 in the Evo deck, and then just have an O Great World in the Evo deck. And I'm not saying that the goal of the deck would be to get the O Great World, because clearly you want to kind of overwhelm the opponent with Ekdar and Tartarus and Ice and all their big stat buffs and everything, but at least have an O Great World as a backup plan in the extra deck, Evolve deck, is at least a decent option as an alt win con, essentially. Also, maybe things have changed because, new cards and everything, but I did do some testing several sets ago at just how many non-departed cards you could have in a departed deck and still not run into issues of having too many non-departeds in Cemetery where you can't really use Tartarus the Tormentor. And at least back then, I kind of realized that once you start to have more than about 5 non-departed in the deck, it starts to get a little awkward with numbers where you'll have certain turns where you want to play Tartarus from like the EX area, but you are like 1 or 2 departed followers short of 15 departed in Cemetery to be able to play Tartarus. So you have to try to find some other solution, but a lot of times that other solution just isn't available. So the fact that there's 11 non-departed in this deck list just makes me question the deck. I'm not saying it's bad. I haven't tested it yet. I don't even have my cards yet, but it just makes me question the deck building method and process is all. So by all means, do what you want. If this deck list works for you, hey, no complaints here. I am just kind of throwing out my thoughts and ideas just from past, deck building and experience. It did come first out of a 31-man tournament, so, it can't be the worst deck in the world. So now all that's been said, if you want to take a look at the deck on Shadow Showdown and at least do some test hands or test mulligans to see what your hands look like, you can certainly do that. The link is in the description on the deck list to play with. And otherwise, I'm going to move on with the individual card explanations and discussion. So if you don't need that, then you're all set. If you have watched my prior Wasteland deck list and review video, some of the cards might be a little repetitive in my explanation, so if you already have seen it, I'm probably going to rehash a lot here with Ilgano and Soul Conversion, so if you want, just feel free to skip to other cards that I haven't yet. But for now, we are going to be talking about Ilgano Horror Stray. She's a 1-cost 1/1 that on Fanfare you can select a Wasteland follower that costs 3 or less in your cemetery, and if you have Necro Charge 10, you may summon it, and if you do summon it at 3 costs or less, then you have to banish Ilgano. Her last words say, put this card into the owner's EX area and bury the top card of your deck. So even when she dies, she essentially comes back to the EX area to be reused again, which works really well with Soul Conversion, because Soul Conversion is a 1-cost spell that says at quick, you can select a follower on your field, destroy it, and draw 2 cards. So you can Soul Convert Il'gyno. Il'gyno goes back to your EX area, and you mill 1 card and draw 2. Not in that order particularly. You would destroy Il'gyno, draw 2, and then mill 1 card and put Il'gyno into the EX area. But, you know, same difference ultimately. Just make sure you mill or draw and mill correctly, because you might be milling cards you should actually be drawing. Next is Dead to Rights. It's a 1-cost spell that at quick, you can select an enemy follower on the field and give it -2/-2, and you can banish Dead to Rights and Ice Shilindra Gilded Autocrat from your cemetery for no playpoint cost, and you can select an enemy follower on the field and engage it, which that has to do with the Magic Train, so that will be discussed later. But what's also nice about this card that I didn't mention in Wastelands is that Dead to Rights is a Departed spell, so it also counts towards your Tartarus the Tormentor Departed count for the 15, so then Tartarus costs 5 less to play him from the EX area, or hand, I suppose, if you never did do him from the EX area. Next is the One of Demonium Punk Devil. It's a 2-cost 2/3 follower with Ward, and it says act. You can give your leader -2 defense to give this follower Bane, and you can only activate this once per turn, and his last words is you gain 2 defense back. He's a pretty solid card that you can resurrect back with Demon Lord Ektar, and he would get a +1/+1 stat buff of a 3/4, or if you have Necrocharge 20, he'd get a +3/+3, so it'd be a 5/6, so pretty good defense. And then with him having Ward and Bane, because you'd pay 2 for that as well, especially in the late game, he could be potentially tedious to deal with. Next up is Arcus Spirited Manager. He's a 2-cost 5/5, which is pretty well statted. However, he can't attack enemies, and at the start of your main phase, if you have Necrocharge 10, you can summon a Ghost token, and he has an act ability of once per turn. You can bury another follower to either draw a card, summon 2 Ghost tokens, or bury the top 2 cards of your deck. He's essentially a pseudo amulet that has HP, since he can't attack anything, but he can get the buff from Demon Lord Ektar and be resurrected by him, where he could either become a 6/6 or an 8/8, so that's pretty solid stat lines regardless of if he can attack. And because of the ability to kind of choose the effect you want by sacrificing your followers, he's able to help you in whichever situation you need, whether you need a little more damage to finish a game with a ghost, or if you need a little more draw for consistency, or if you're trying to get Necrocharge 10 or 15 or 20 to finish the game. Next is the Abysscraft Classic, Do Blame Duke and Dane. He's a 2-cost 2/2 that evolves for 1, and on Fanfare you bury the top card of your deck, which can help with your Necrocharge. And on Evolve, you can select an enemy follower on the field and deal 2 damage, but if you have Necrocharge 10, you can deal 4 damage instead. Do Blame is ultimately used to deal with multiple spamming low-cost boards, which are usually from like decks like Swordcraft or other such, similar decks. It helps keep the board cleared so you can get to the late game without feeling overwhelmed from a bunch of followers. Next up is Skeleton Dreamer. He's a 2-cost 2/3 that says whenever this follower gains attack or defense, give it Storm, and on last word you get to summon a Bullet Bike token and bury the top card of your deck. The Bullet Bike can be nice later on in the game to get a little bit more damage. You could always throw it on one of the ghosts that Arcus might summon, but also Skeleton Dreamer, the main point of him is to be resurrected by Demon Lord Ektar, and since Ektar stat buffs all the followers on the board when he's summoned, it also works on Skeleton Dreamer, and so he also just instantly gets Storm for the turn. Next up is the Trifecta of Nicola, Forbidden Strength, his Evo, and the spell Forbidden Art. Nicola is a 3-cost 3/3 follower that on Fanfare you bury the top 2 cards of your deck. He evolves for 1, and on Evolve you can select a Machina card that costs 2 or less in your cemetery and put it into your EX area, and it costs 2 less to play for the turn. The only other 2-cost Machina card that you run in the deck is Forbidden Art, so the point is on Evolve to be able to grab Forbidden Art and then cast it for free to destroy a follower. And then Nicola can also have Rush to deal with something else on the board. And keep in mind, all 3 cards are Departed traded, even though they don't look Departed, as in like a undead looking, but he is Departed, so that's why he's also included in the deck. Next is Great Pick Corpse. He's a 3-cost 3/3 that on Fanfare you bury another card, select an enemy follower on the field, and deal it 4 damage. Do keep in mind that it is bury another card, so that can also be an amulet amulet if you do run amulets, or the bullet bike that the Skeleton Dreamer generates, or even Ilgano, since she is easy to resurrect back. And also once per turn, when a 1-cost token card you control leaves the field, you get to summon a token of the same name. For what it's worth as well, if you already have a Great Pick Corpse and a token card on your field, if you play another Great Pick Corpse from your hand, if you pop the 1-cost token, let's just say a bullet bike for example, both Great Pick Corpses would see that the bullet bike disappears, and so they would both actually generate a bullet bike, so you'd actually get 2 bullet bike amulets back on the board instead of just 1. He's also one of the 2 good viable choices for Ilgano's Fanfare effect, where you banish her and summon a 3-cost or less Wasteland follower back from the cemetery. But keep in mind, if you want to bury another card, you're not going to be able to bury Ilgano in that case because she'll be banished at that point. Next is the ideal card you'd like to resurrect back with Ilgano. It's the Wretch. It's a 3-cost 3/2 that says you can evolve it for 1, however you can only activate it if the follower was summoned from the cemetery onto the field. It does have Rush and last words of summon a bullet bike token and bury the top 2 cards of your deck. On evolve, it does gain Storm, and it has an on evolve effect of you get to select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 5 damage, and it still retains the bullet bike last word effect as well, along with the bury 2. The Wretch is ultimately meant in the late game to be kind of the finisher with the Storm and being 4 attack, along with being able to add bullet bike amulet buffs to it to make it potentially a 5 or 6. Maybe if you're stretching it, maybe 7 attack. But yeah, it's supposed to try to help finish out games along with the Magic Train, which we'll talk about soon. Next is Zelganea the World. I do have the O Great World copy here, but I'm not going to really discuss it because it isn't in the deck. But if you want to read it, feel free to pause the video and read it. But Zelganea the World is a 5-cost 5/5 that has 2 fanfare abilities. The first fanfare says you can select an enemy follower on the field, and if there are no other followers on your field, destroy it and draw a card. And the second fanfare is if your leader's defense is 10 or less, give yourself 5 life. It does have another act ability of banishing it from the cemetery and paying 10 play points, and you can put Zelganea O Great World from your Evolved deck into the EX area, but considering the deck doesn't run O Great World, I suppose you wouldn't ever use that part of its ability. I think ultimately what this is meant to be for is a little bit of sustain, a little bit of board control and draw, and be able to pay 1 play point and engage Zelganea to maneuver the Magic Train. We have one more card before the big 3, and it's Underworld Watchman Kawi. He's a 5-cost 5/5 with Ward, and last words of select an enemy follower on the field, destroy it, and give your leader X life, and the X equals the selected follower's attack. And so he's mainly meant to be able to, engage him, pay 1 play point, and then maneuver the Magic Train, which automatically just gives him Ward for the turn, and he is just a really annoying body, so yeah, great choice for the deck. Alright, on to one of the main stars of the deck, Ice Shillinger Gilded Autocrat. He's a 5-cost 5/5 that on fanfare, if you have no Magic Train on your field, you get to summon one, and whenever the card becomes engaged, each opponent discards a card, and he evolves for 1. On evolve, you may discard a card from your hand, and you can select 2 followers in your cemetery and add them to your hand, and whenever he becomes engaged, he still makes your opponent discard a card, and then during your turn, whenever a player discards a card, you get to select an enemy follower on the field and engage it. So between your on evolve discard, and then if it gets engaged, your opponent discarding, it works either way, whether it's you or your opponent. The Magic Train he generates is a 5-cost 4/5 amulet, which might seem weird if you're not familiar with the amulet vehicles, but it has an act effect of paying 1 play point and tapping any number of followers that costs a total of 5 or more on your field, and you get to maneuver the card, and when it maneuvers, it means it becomes a 4/5 follower on the field for the turn. It gains Rush and a Strike ability where you can select an engaged enemy follower on the field, destroy it, and give your leader +2 defense. So ultimately, the main game plan, if you can, is on turn 7, play Ice, get the Magic Train, pay 1 play point to evolve Ice, discard a card to get 2 cards back from your cemetery. That triggers Ice's Evolve effect, where you can select an enemy follower on the field and engage it. And then you would pay 1 play point and engage Ice to maneuver the Magic Train. And since Ice becomes engaged, then your opponent has to discard a card, which then also means your opponent has to engage another follower on their field. And then now that the Magic Train becomes a real follower and there are 2 followers on the field that are engaged, the Magic Train can rush into one and then pop the other one. Usually whichever one is the biggest one you'll pop. With the Magic Train as well, keep in mind that the rush is really irrelevant after the first turn that you play it, because because afterwards it doesn't have any kind of summoning sickness. And so normally what you'll do with the Magic Train after the first turn is just run it into the opponent with 4 potentially more damage between Demon Lord Ektar or the Bullet Bike amulets. You could buff up the Magic Train. Also, when the Magic Train gets to the end of the turn, if it's still, you know, alive with some toughness, it will lose all its stats, but that also includes its toughness. So when it comes back around to your turn next time and you remaneuver cards to make the Magic Train a follower again, it actually gets reset back to being a 4/5 follower. What's crazy as well, if you haven't realized, is he's a departed follower, so he also counts towards Tartarus the Tormentor's 15 departed and cemetery ability. And you can also grab other copies of Ice with his On Evolve, because it says you can grab 2 followers, and if you have another copy of Ice in your cemetery, you can just discard a card to grab back another copy of Ice, so he recurs himself really easily. Ultimately, Tartarus is just the star of the show for the deck, at least for this set, and I'm pretty sure for the foreseeable future, he's just running the deck in general, because he's just that good. The next big card of the deck is Demon Lord Ektar. He's a 7-cost 5/6 that on Fanfare, if you have Necrocharge 10, you can select up to 2 Abysscraft followers that cost 2 play points or less in your cemetery and put them onto your field, and give each of the other followers on your field +1/+1. If you have Necrocharge 20 though, you give +3/+3 instead of the +1/+1. Also, as long as Demon Lord Ektar is on the field, each Abysscraft follower on your field has Rush. The one thing I do want to clarify with Arcus Spirited Manager is even though he gains Rush, he still can't attack enemies, so that doesn't work with him. The other 2 cards here are just alternate printings of Demon Lord Ektar. He does get printed as Lelouch, Leader of the Black Knights, and Lelouch, Righteous Emperor. They're all Demon Lord Ektar. As you can see, his name is right above their the Code Geass names, but it's just kind of like a collab that was done during set 4, and ultimately between the 3 different variants, you can only have up to 3 copies total in the deck. Probably the number 1 prime target you'll want to resurrect back is Skeleton Dreamer, but between Arcus Spirited Manager, Demonium Punk Devil, and you could even resurrect Ilgano to then sacrifice Ilgano to bring back a Wretch. Those are all good options, but do keep in mind as well with the Wretch, he does not get the stat buffs from Demon Lord Ektar because he would show up after you finish resolving Demon Lord Ektar's effect. Last but certainly not least is Tartarus the Tormentor. He's a 10-cost 7/7, which sounds really expensive. However, you will never play him at 10, and if you do, then you are doing something terribly wrong with the deck. The reason why you won't pay 10 for him is because he costs 5 less to play if you have at least 15 departed cards in your cemetery, and considering the deck is primarily made of departed followers, you're gonna want to play this only when you have the 15 or more in cemetery. He has an Axe skill that you can pay 1 play point and put him into your EX area, and you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck and reveal a departed card from among them and add it to your hand, and then bury the rest. And once you evolve him for 1, you can select a departed follower in your cemetery and summon it, and he becomes an 8/8. In a perfect world, with the act ability, you'd want to grab a copy of Ice Shillendrig, but obviously that's not always going to happen, but it does help with the consistency of the deck, and considering most of the deck is departed, you're more than likely going to be able to at least select something out of the 2. The big wombo combo for the deck is, assuming you have a Magic Train token on the field from an earlier turn, you play Tartarus for 5 onto the field, pay 1, not to evolve him, but to engage him to maneuver the Magic Train, and then you can pay 1 to evolve Tartarus, and then on the on-evolve, you get to select a departed follower from your cemetery and summon it, which would be Demon Lord Ektar. When Demon Lord Ektar enters the field, you'd select 2 followers from your cemetery, whether it's, Punk Devil, Skeleton Dreamer, Arcus, the list can go on, or Ilgano. You would select the 2 you want, play the 2, that's a full board. Demon Lord Ektar would give the +3/+3 stat buff. Ideally at this point, it might be +1/+1, but assuming it's +3/+3 stat buff to everything. So then the Magic Train becomes a 7/5, and since the Magic Train, assuming has been there for at least a turn or 2, it can just swing for face for 7 and deal a good amount of damage, along with, destroying a follower that's engaged and then healing 2. And then along with the Magic Train, obviously swinging for a good amount of damage. If you, even if you bring back 2 Skeleton Dreamers, that's 5/6 on the board. That's 10 damage total between 2 of them. So that's a total of 17 damage right there. So it's a big wombo combo turn. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have questions or anything, let me know in the comments. I know I kind of went through a big wombo combo turn at the end there. So if you're kind of confused as far as what's going on or what I'm talking about, feel free to let me know. Maybe I'll even draw a little like how-to or step-by-step of what I'm talking about if you're more of a visual learner. But if you have any questions or anything, feel free to ask, and don't forget to like and subscribe as well. So thanks for watching. Bye.